Jose Mourinho's press conference and Matic, there were 20 questions and not one about Valencia. Do you think it's a good moment to take them, given the fact that they seem more interested in other things? Good afternoon. Well, what they ask Mourinho, as you'd understand, it's not something that is relevant for me. We know that we're facing a really difficult opponent who are going to make things difficult for us. And perhaps they're not in their best shape at the moment, but it's a situation that could happen to us. It's similar. So what's important is tomorrow's game, the circumstances that will play out throughout the game, and we hope to play well and to get a favourable result. Good afternoon. Manchester, in 29 years, it's their worst start in the league in 29 years. And then there's issues in the dressing room. Is this not a great time to beat them here at Old Trafford, truly? We'll win if we play well. Whether it's the best or the worst moment to play them, who knows? A big club like this, a team like this, with a manager who is probably one of the most experienced in the world, and some extraordinary footballers with huge investment, one of the most important teams in the world, in the best club competition in the world. Can we expect that they don't put in their maximum? There's no way that the previous game you've played can have anything to do with this game that's coming up. There's a little more than 24 hours to play, and then we'll know if Valencia are capable of winning here. But not for anything that's gone before the game. It will be what happens during the game, and we'll see who's been the best team and who has had the most opportunities and been able to capitalise on those. Do you think Valencia have less pressure than Manchester United because of the demands that they have, because of the investments? We know the demands that Valencia have as well. Every week we ask that from the club. But do you think that Valencia go into this game with less demands and that might work out better for them? That's less favouritism, but as professionals, we have to put the most demands on ourselves, and that's undoubtable. I wanted to ask you about the weaknesses and the strengths of Manchester United. What do you think is the best that Manchester United have, and what's the worst, and where do you think there's possibility to hurt them? Physically, they're a team who are, without doubt, I was going to say three, but possibly the three strongest teams in Europe. They have attacking prowess, which is amazing. They have top-class players, many of them. There has been more than 70 million euros in terms of investment in the market. They have international players who play for their countries. Then they have an aerial game which is really strong. It's a great side. They're prepared. They're ready to fight for the top things in the Premier League, in the Champions League. We will try to stop them playing via group work. We understand that it's a team that find it difficult to defend collectively. But they are a very powerful team, strong team. And we hope we are able to get things right more than our opponent. And after the first game that we played, We played at the start. We're hoping that we're able to compete for 90 minutes this time. If we do, I think we have a chance to win. I wanted to ask you about the form that the team come into this game. Rodrigo spoke about the team when they weren't winning. People said that the results weren't fair. How are the team now in terms of the way they are feeling, also in the form that they are in? I think in both aspects, it's something progressive. I think the victory wasn't coming and didn't come for us in various matches. With all the humility and honesty, I think we have a lot less points than we should have, than we deserve. I don't think we've reached our top level yet because we think we've got great potential. But that's based on various circumstances, both in terms of the competition and situations within the squad. Perhaps individual problems that we've had, the World Cup, injuries. We had some players that came back quite late after the World Cup. We thought that the victory was very close, and then we thought we deserved it on numerous occasions. But the team never looked like they were vulnerable, or it never looked easy for our opponents. I think yesterday that gave us that push that we needed, and this raising of the self-esteem. Things always get better or get worse. Perhaps you force things a little more, which is perhaps what we saw in the first 15, 20 minutes in San Sebastian. But that's in the past. The result we managed to get, and as I've said, we were playing better than our result suggested. And now we're in a really exciting competition. Last year, players worked really hard to get here, and we hope that this is the way that this team can go back to competing with the bests, with these big rivals on these big stages.
Having worked with Eric by Villarreal, how surprised are you that he's not played more for Manchester United of late, and what would you say of his potential going forward?
He's a young player who's had injuries, and whenever you have injuries, it's very difficult to progress in all senses. He's a player, and that's logical, who needs to adapt to understand the football that he's playing in the competition and the demands at Manchester United. For a young guy, his individual qualities are, without doubt, fantastic. And I think that with time, he will start to show performances that reflect the fantastic quality he has.
Sobre el primer partido y la importancia de haberse estrenado ya en la Champions. Le hago dos preguntas. La primera es, ¿qué cree que debe haber aprendido el equipo de aquel partido ante la Juve? Y la segunda, sí.
What do you think they will have learnt from that game against Juventus? And how would you compare them to Juventus? And do you think there are still chances for the other two in the group to get to the top positions? I wouldn't rule out any team at the moment. This competition is short. There are 6 games, but there are always surprises, and there's always one team that perhaps you consider a team that are going to get through, and then in the end they occupy the top 2 positions in the group. There are games at home and away, and we'll face up to them like finals. For us, there's no doubt that the game against Juventus, we won't forget. The Champions League doesn't forgive you. It's unforgiving. We have to play 90 minutes with that same intensity and concentration. Against Juventus, we thought we were going in at half-time 0-0 because we were playing better. But then to go away with a bad result because of a piece of play that we could have stopped was tough. But in the second half, after a corner, our opponent scored again. A team like Juventus is a huge side and is a clear candidate to win this competition. After the sending off, they had no more chances, but they took advantage of our mistakes, and those little details, we have to iron those out, because this competition is the top level in terms of collective play, and we have to come out and play a perfect game to beat Manchester United. You've just said I wanted to ask how you can combat Manchester United by your lineup tomorrow, because given that they are a physical team, how much does the fact that you're playing a physical team, how can you face up to that, and how can you combat that? We will try to counteract that physical way of playing of our opponent. I think we have a team who are also physical, perhaps not at the level of Juventus and Manchester United. When we looked at the group, the comments that we made between ourselves was that we are against two of probably the three most physical teams on the continent. But we have to try and play with our weapons. We're not going to change our lineup just thinking about combating that physical aspect. We're going to play in the way that we know how to play. We have to try and combine with ourselves, and we have to try and score goals, because we have to score goals to win. But it's obvious that we will bear this in mind. We will try and play collectively in a way that they can't dominate us, and we will try and concede as few opportunities as possible. But we know we're against a very powerful team with strong attacking players. They're tall, they're strong. We know that they have a great counter-attack. They attack spaces well, and we have to try and defend well, but always thinking about our own concepts. At one-off moments, we have to think about our opponent. The team has started to get better. They're winning. Yeah. Last week, the team was winning, and then there was an option of the penalty. Do you think there's always something within a game that makes it difficult to feel relaxed within a game? Mistakes are part of the game. It's very difficult to stop all mistakes during 90 minutes. If that happened, the majority of the matches would finish 0-0. What we need to try and do is make sure that these errors don't all come at once. Obviously, against Celta, we had chances to finish off the game and perhaps stop ourselves from being in a situation where we might be able to stop a situation from happening. Normally, when things are negative, these types of situations can happen. We have to analyze on a global level, more a general way. We saw that you said, and you said that the team was vulnerable because we conceded 5 goals in 3 games. In many games you said that, but in successive games, our opponents created very few chances. And now we are in the last 4 games in the league, and Juventus, they only scored penalties against us. We have to also stop conceding penalties because we have conceded 3 in the last 2 games. So it's a bit of everything joined together. But there's no doubt that the improvement of our attacking players and the ability that they have, and them scoring, has allowed us to not be susceptible to conceding a chance or a goal. Talking about the centre of midfield, you defended Parejo, saying he was in his best moment, and that was almost not even up for argument. Fortunately, because of injuries, we've seen him play well. Is he good with Dobia? Parejo, Carlos on the wing. Last year, I saw a line within the centre of midfield that after injuries, you had something that worked really well. Do you think we're going to see those 4 players together in their best physical state, free of injuries? Undoubtedly, for us and for all teams, it's very important to have all your players fit and available. If you're being a bit more precise with the question, I think we had a problem at the start of the competition. For certain functions within the middle of the field, we had Dobby and Belén. After that, in that position, defensive midfielders, when we didn't have those players, we are less of a powerful team when we don't have those players. Parejo and Carlos can play there. For another position, we have different options. But if we don't have this defensive central midfielder, then we do have problems. And in those games that we didn't have that option, we did have problems. And I also think these players are really, really important for us. And I think they allow us to have more consistency on the pitch. And then going off what you said, last week, in our best moments, which are always the ones you remember, this central midfield was the area where we played most. Apart from those 4 players playing, I think those 4 were at their top level at that moment. My colleague asked Rodrigo about the situation in Mestalla against Celta, and Rodrigo, who was the leader on the pitch, off and off the pitch last season. How is Marcelino enjoying the relationship with Rodrigo? How is the relationship? Because he wasn't in the starting lineup last time out. Rodrigo played in the World Cup. He arrived late. He started to train very quickly. He played a lot of minutes. He has played a lot of minutes in Valencia. He played a lot of continuous minutes, consecutive minutes in the national team. When a footballer is on the market and there's a possibility of him going to such big clubs, it's difficult to cope with that situation because the player might think that it's the opportunity of a lifetime. So here there is a group of circumstances, both mentally and physically, and it gets to a point where you think the body and the mind are both tired. So from that moment, I think that Rodrigo, perhaps his level dropped slightly compared to what we're used to since I've been here, but which was very high. So we try to make an effort, and then if he puts the effort in, he will go back to his optimal level that we are used to, and that's the process we're in at the moment. 2 questions. Playing with VAR and without VAR, will it be any different playing in a Champions League game against Manchester? It might change, but I think it's easier to get used to a VAR or not having him. But I think we have to be ready for the match, the opponent. We have to try and win fouls. For us, it's something I'm satisfied with, and to have the opportunity to come to this great stadium to play a Champions League game. It was exciting for us to participate in the best club competition in the world, and fortunately we're doing it with Valencia. We're really happy about competing tomorrow and possibly arriving in the last 16 of this competition. But to do that, you have to play games of this high level and to compete in them and win them.
Muchas gracias a todos. Thank you very much.